welcome. This is my little chat about my 11th book of my second comprehensive exam. It's the Temagami Experience, Recreation Resources and Aboriginal Rights in the Northern Ontario Wilderness by Bruce Hodgins and Jamie Benidickson. So this past weekend, I had the opportunity to gather at Wanapate with some members of the Temeagama Anishinaabe and Temeagama Anishinaabeg and concerned non-Indigenous folks like Jeff Hodgins, who is the son of the author Bruce Hodgins. So we were talking about Indaki Temagami in the past, present, and future contexts. And it was really meaningful to gather at Wanapate as the Hodgins family purchased Wanapate in the 1950s. And it had also been the campsite supporting the infamous Red Squirrel Road blockade in 1986. I felt so humbled and inspired to sit with folks who were part of the blockade and who continue to move forward with projects and efforts to shift the human side of the relationship um, back to a balanced one with Ndaki which is the traditional lands of the Temagama people. So I intentionally read this book so that it would align with this gathering, since the author was deeply connected and concerned with the history of multiple interest groups vying for authority and sometimes cooperation in Ndaki. This book is really thick with detail, at times almost impenetrable, and it is one of those resources that I'll likely have to go back to again and again. Many times I lost the thread of what was going on. I'd be like, who is this person? What are we talking about? Um, it could also be just like perimenopause brain that I just have a hard time. But, anyways, um, the authors explicitly acknowledge that their perspective is that of summer residents and canoeist or recreation users. And they were interested in presenting a relatively balanced approach to all the different interest groups. Though they did acknowledge and wove the histories of the Agama peoples in it, it is lacking in centering other ways of knowing and being, making this just one piece of the puzzle of a more conclusive narrative, which is just the way that it goes with so many narratives, right? We need to read from many different perspectives in order to really understand what's happening. Um, because it's so detail dense, there are many threads that could be pulled out from this book. So I'm just going to talk about one in particular that stood out for me. So, common to many areas of what we now call Canada, the early interactions between Indigenous and non Indigenous peoples were within the context of fur trade, business interactions, early capitalistic relationships. They were rarely really person to person relationships. The thought of what could be gained was also a part of the relationship. And it's a concept that, to a very large extent, that was on the non-Indigenous side of that relationship. So it's almost like this third person that's in a relationship. Um, I loved so there were really rarely person to person relationships, and the thought of what could be gained was also part of the relationship. And that concept was to a very large extent on the non Indigenous side of that relationship, like I said. I loved reading this one little section where the efforts by the Hudson Bay Company employees to control the commerce when independent traders were coming in to purchase the furs from the Temagama hunters. The HBC employees introduced a credit or debt system as an attempt to exert power over the Indigenous harvesters, thinking that if they gave them items like flour on credit, then the harvesters would need to trade with them and to pay off their debts and not be trading with their outside competition. But that would require an agreement to this early capitalist system that wasn't their own. So it was a bit of a wonky way of relating that brought the colonizing HBC company to the land in the first place. So there was a story of an indigenous person named Kana Schitz who told the CBC post manager not to worry, he'll pay his debt next year, and went ahead and traded his furs with the independent trader who gave him a better price. I was kind of chuckling. It feels cheeky according to today's standards, but what it symbolizes to me is how getting something gets in the way of real relationships way back then as it does now. And with Temagami being framed in ways so deeply entrenched in timber profit, mining, and even recreation tourism, financial considerations hold such a strong place in the relationship with Ndaki Manan. I had to really think about my own relationship with Minan as I joined this working group to be thinking about and dreaming about a future of Minan. I don't want to replicate the patterns that non-Indigenous people have set before me, and I want to relate in a more balanced way and a good way. And to do that, I really have to look at my own ways of relating and understanding. Um, so this book is a great resource if you're looking for some very detailed history of Temagami. Thanks.